One. Hello and welcome to Product Lessons, a podcast channel where we talk to product leaders from all over the world and learn from them how they build world class software products. Before I introduce my guest this evening, I want to let you know that this podcast is in four channels: a video on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple iTunes. I just see a issue at my end. Just give me a second. Yes, perfect. All right. So the links are mentioned below in the description. If you like these conversations, do consider hitting subscribe. I have some cool guests coming up, including Marty Kagan next month for the second time, and many other guests from product space. Also, hit me on Twitter. It's Product Lessons. I engage more there than any other social media platform. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to have with me Vijay Bhaskar Rao. He is a product veteran. He was the co-founder of appsfly.io. It exited to Walmart Labs, and I'm gonna ask him the story about that. He worked then for Soroko, and then he was a senior manager at Ola. And now, for over a year, he's a lead product manager, partnership integrations, and API platform at da, da, da. I completely missed out on the name there.
At SIgnEasy.
SignEasy, of course, SignEasy, and we are gonna talk a lot about SignEasy today as well. Um, yeah, and for the next 90 minutes, we are gonna go really deep into unraveling APIs as a product strategy. APIs, what does it mean for business, especially for product managers? When we are trained about products, we often have a narrow vision of products. We talk about standalone products, but we often are not aware of APIs because we are only product aware, and that is losing out on a massive API opportunity for growth. So we'll talk about that. We talk about how it creates new businesses. We'll learn about some existing success stories like Stripe. We will understand how creating differentiation in a concentrated market helps you. We'll talk about driving meaningful partnerships. How does one go about identifying and developing an API opportunity in their current products? We have a lot on our plate. As I said, a minimum of 90 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So with that, I welcome Vijay. Vijay, please let me know how are you doing today. Hi, Vijay.
Hi, Ravi.
How are you doing
Thanks
today,
for
Vijay?
that. I'm doing great. Thanks for that warm introduction. I don't think I'm a veteran yet. I'm just taking baby steps towards understanding the product management space even better. And thanks for that really warm welcome. I've been a keen follower of product lessons, and like some of the speakers, especially Marty Kagan has been one of my product idols, and I find your podcast really helpful, and happy to be on the platform today.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, and I'm very excited. So let's dig deeper. So Vijay, I spoke about your entrepreneurial gig. Maybe of course, we can talk about APIs, but let's
Yeah.
start with that. So you were co-founder of AppsFly. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so we kind of conceptualized the idea of appsfly.io back in 2017, when I think the integrations market was kind of just starting off, right? There was an explosion of SaaS happening at the same time, and we were trying to solve how can we connect two disparate products or together to kind of provide a workflow to the users. So we were an integration platform as a service, and we did start out. There were we were four co-founders, and we had like an amazing support of our investors, and we built out a product that we went with the initial prototype. And we kind of had like few marquee customers where we kind of onboarded them and tried to scale up the product. As we went deeper into the product life cycle, we understood we had amazing tech platform, but what we couldn't leverage was the market positioning, and that's where and it was a combination of a couple of things. One, we were our business proposition was not clear, but also the market maturity was not present at that time. But I think, like, even despite that, we kind of grew the product to a good scale, and then we got the team acquired by Walmart, and it was an amazing journey for AppsFly and its team members.
Got it. And what's your role today at SIgnEasy? What are your responsibilities? What are your outcomes that you are trying to drive within your organization?
So I joined SIgnEasy about a year back. I'm the lead product manager. I'm handling partnerships, integrations, and APIs. The main mandate of my role is to make SIgnEasy available at places where our users use it, right? So how when we do build out products, I think this is something that you were touching upon initially. As PMs, when we do build products and drive a vision, we expect our users to come find us and discover us and use us in the clients that we provide. But off late, there's been a shift in the industry where users want to use their products in ecosystems or in other systems which they use in their work life on a day-to-day basis. So my entire goal is to make sure how do I take SIgnEasy to the places where people need them the most and in the right context. So that's where I come in.
Got it. Got it. All right, we'll talk about SIgnEasy as we proceed, because
Mhm.
SIgnEasy's business model is also API based. So let's get started. So the best thing about this interview is Vijay has put in a lot of effort to structure our conversation today. He has prepared slides, and since we are on video format as well, I'm so excited that we will be able to go through these slides and have these conversations guided by his structure. So I'm going to share the slides now. So Vijay, excellent. So he has titled the slide is thinking of APIs and products, and this is exactly what I would want to talk about. I would want to know about why API first strategy has helped win so many companies. So Vijay, why don't you get started?
Yeah, I thanks, Ravi. So yeah, I think, like, just to kick off, just a basic explainer about APIs. I think a lot of us already know what APIs are, but just to refresh your memory, APIs are application programming interfaces. They are the bridges of the modern software applications, right? So they're basically the connecting tissues that allow us to connect two systems and give a medium to talk to each other, right? And think of it like, when you've started out building systems within your organization. We've over the past decade, we've broken down different monoliths into different services, and these services are talking to each other. So APIs are these connective tissues that help enable communication between these different applications. The different forms of APIs. One's definitely the third-party APIs that you consume within your own product, your APIs that you use for your internal use. And the third one is basically APIs that you expose for your partners and external customers, right? And as you can see, and they're labeled as private APIs, public, and partner APIs. Partner APIs are definitely partner and public APIs are more external facing. Private APIs are more inside your company, right? And as you would have it, like, people, organizations tend to have a lot more of the private APIs than the public and the partner APIs, right? So
So
let's
would
let's
it be
let's yeah.
would it be fair to say that the ones that are exposed are the ones that make money than the private APIs? Is that how it is?
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously, the private APIs are not exposed directly as a business, but what they do is they do power your existing and underlying business. So if you're thinking of an uh, Uber app, right, like requesting the ride hailing, and all of that is talking to an internal allocation system, right, and they're governed by different private APIs. So while these APIs are not directly exposed to the customer, but they are allowing the user to book a ride and then move from place A to B, right? So private APIs help definitely build your business out, but they're not consumed directly.
Got it.
But partner and public APIs are exposed as, APIs that your users can consume and they're going to pay for it, right? So
Got
if
it.
so yeah, that's the way to think about it. Partner and public APIs are more exposed outward, and private are kept inside, but they do drive business as well.
Got it. Will you also explain the difference between partner and public?
So yeah, public APIs more often than not, like, they need, some of the public APIs need not be monetized. More often than not, your partner APIs are monetized. Public APIs, you have your Google Maps API, which is sort of like, provided to everyone for free usage, and this is some functionality that is available to the users. Partner APIs are more towards, your actual API customers, right? Like, who are going to use this and pay for it. So I think that's the key difference, more or less. What you could think of is partner APIs are a subset of public APIs.
Got it. Thank you.
Right. So let's begin with the first kind, right? Like, you're just integrating your product, third-party APIs into your product. I think, like, most of us are aware today, if we want to kind of monetize our app, and we want to include payments within our application, we look towards Stripe or Braintree, and want to include that functionality, right? And this is so true for social media and ads APIs, whether it's the Twitter API, Instagram, YouTube. These are and if you're providing a login with Salesforce, or login with Microsoft, or login with LinkedIn or Facebook within your application, you're more often than not using authorization access and identity providers such as Auth0 or OneLogin, right? And for maps, you're typically using either Google Maps or some cool products like Mapbox. So these are third-party APIs that kind of provide you this neat little functionality that you don't necessarily have to focus on building, but you can stitch these together to deliver your products with much more delight to your end customers, and have a increased value proposition beyond your core offering. And they have really good advantages. One thing is, you're definitely, because you're not building this in-house and you're using the best of technologies out there, it's going to it's definitely lower effort, but it'll also cost you cheaper because you're not putting up that initial upfront cost to develop this functionality by yourself.
So
Um,
how does so as a PM, so you're working closely with your developers and you're creating a new component. How do you decide whether to build it yourself or if there is an API available or not? Because sometimes we do not know. Of course, Stripe is popular. And authorization, access identity, auth, everybody knows. But could there be possibility where we are trying to build something of our own, but we are not aware that there could be a popular API provider already? How do you do that? Do you just Google about it,
yeah.
or do you talk to developer forums? How do you do that?
I think mostly developers. I think if you're looking at resources within your company, talking to as a PM, talking to your developers will definitely help because they're usually like discovering new APIs and functionalities, or either trying to source inspiration from APIs which are already out there. Right, that's one internal reference that you could or a source that you could leverage. But what is also more important is nowadays, like you have a lot of API marketplaces which enable discovery of these third-party APIs. So you could log into something as simple as like the Postman public API network, and you could also leverage rapid APIs, which kind of help you to discover these APIs, and they're segmented by different categories. The popular ones obviously are, easier to search, but I think these are more accessible now rather than before, right?
Got it.
And a lot of companies are listing their APIs in all of these marketplaces.
Got
So discovery is definitely easy, and always Google's there to help, and you could search for the APIs based on the functionality that you're looking for, and you could potentially get your result. So the way I go about it is like usually the marketplace yields one result, and I'd be leveraging something like a G2 or to kind of find out what are the competitors are there to this product, so that I can make a decision, right? Whether whether there is like there's I try to break down each product by its feature and the cost that they're offering, and like what is the ease of maintenance and pricing, definitely.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, like I was saying, adding on to beyond the lower effort, it's basically about added functionality, right? Sometimes the features are required, especially when it comes to identity and authorization and access management. Uh, these systems are quite complex to build, right? But if you look at it in the realm of a SaaS product, you might want to provide additional social logins, right? Like login with Gmail, uh, uh, Office 365, or Salesforce or LinkedIn, right? If you were to sit and build this out by themselves, you might slow down the pace at which you launch to the market and make this functionality available. Second, you would also be, focusing on maintenance, right? Which just slows you down, and like which adds additional burden to you. But if you were to leverage these APIs, you're going to quickly add complex and desirable functionalities very quickly onto your product, right? And sometimes you can most of these APIs are composable by nature, right? You can build on top of these and add additional benefit, and we'll see the example of that in the next slide, which is where companies have moved from just this I'll design my own code and then into these beautiful little monoliths, and then just build out a full application. I think that's kind of changed, right? Like, so we've gone from code first to API first. So we've broken down monoliths. We've built them into different smaller microservices, which have a very specific or a point functionality, right? And we've defined, we have very well defined APIs to kind of interact between these services. So just and most of your applications are now powered by different internal and third party APIs, right? Um, if you could just look at a simple booking screen from Uber, you could actually notice many. There are definitely many internal APIs, but what I wanted to kind of showcase here is how they're leveraging the Google Maps API to kind of provide you the position as well as the estimate of how far the cab is, as well as how much time would it take to get to your destination, right? So all of these things are actually provided by the Maps API, and it also provides SDKs so that you can embed that functionality within your own uh, application. So if you look at it, Uber's already leveraging Google Maps API, and the logo is present. So in this case, it's not white labeled, right? But if you come down below, especially when you're entering the card, it's your payment, where your payment information is captured. They're leveraging the Braintree APIs to save your card, to capture your card details, save your card details, and make that purchase journey so very smooth, right? And they also leveraging an internal Uber allocation API. Whenever someone clicks on Uber X, like it's making a call to an internal system which is finding out all the surrounding cabs that are around you and what would be the best uh, the cab that can take you to your place based on the driver partner's acceptance of your your request. And the third thing is obviously they are leveraging the Twilio API to send out comms, right? Like obviously they have in-app notifications, but they're also sending you out an SMS. They're sending you an email regarding like your invoice once the purchase is done, and a lot of these things, right? And they are leveraging this API to get things communicated to their users. So if you
So
look at this,
this is
yeah.
so interesting. So come to think of it, Uber is nothing but a patchwork of different APIs, isn't it?
Yes, and
Just the front end.
I mean that just the I mean, yeah, obviously that a lot of APIs do power the Uber application, but what they have done is they've been able to focus on their core value proposition, right? Their value proposition is how do I move people from A to B, and they in future they've moved that people to things and different other artifacts as well, right? I think the way to kind of look at this would be you necessarily as an organization don't have to build everything by yourself. There's always someone who can bring in that best in class experience and functionality, which you could easily leverage and focus on your core value proposition and actually spend that time talking to users or building beautiful journeys for your users,
Got it.
right?
And if there are costs involved for the API services, then you come up with a pricing mechanism where these costs are covered in your unit price, isn't it? So that's how it is.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, you'll have to factor this in your unit economics, one thing. And some of these APIs tend to price you on the scale at which you're operating. So the bigger the company, you might be your cost to these API providers might be bigger, right? Like I think Uber pays more than around like 10 million dollars in a month, but and it's only going to grow as they reach out to a wider user base. But I think at some point, like your where your core focus is, you could also spend $10 million building a Twilio like system, and
Right.
you can do that. But then again, you need to kind of weigh the benefits, right? So
Right.
if the costs are more than your benefits, obviously you're going to make that decision inside and build this. But and or also you're going to have a chat with your vendor to come up with a better pricing or a customized pricing strategy so that it fits into your unit economics model. But
Actually, I was talking to my brother-in-law who is in Facebook.
right.
So Facebook has a billion users, more than that, and so I was asking them, "Hey, what analytics tool do you use for measuring your events with your product usage?" And he says that no, we don't use. So I asked him, "Do you use Amplitude or do you use any of these services, Mixpanel or something of that sort?" He said, no, 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 we have our internal tools to use it.
Exactly.
And then I realized that it would not be affordable for them to take a third party service because they have billions of events generated every day. So it makes sense to invest in an internal tooling than to have an external tool. So it actually depends upon the scale of your business and what works
Yeah.
and what does not, isn't it? Okay.
Exactly, because most of these APIs and these functionalities help you get off the ground quickly, right?
Right.
Especially when you're in your early stages of your product market fit, or when you're trying to scale. But once you found your product market fit and have a scale, but you're seeing that as you're growing, your costs are also going to increase with that. You might want to figure out how you can support those economics much better, right?
Got it.
And that's where it is at that point you would make a decision whether to move over to something that you build internally.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, and like the other kind, once you're definitely interacting with a lot of external APIs to kind of build your own product, but there are other APIs that you want to build inside your own company that bring agility to your development, right? So these are your internal APIs, and um, uh, we like I said, we our development approach has changed from building these monoliths that do everything, and then we've shifted to getting these monoliths, distribute deploy the same clone is deployed to multiple regions as we scale, to actually now breaking down into microservices which have these point focus, and actually building well-defined APIs on top so that these microservices can talk to each other. So what these internal APIs have sort of done is made sure that uh, the this these my the microservices that you're creating, the common core, can be used by other services very easily, right? And other dev team members also can leverage this. They need not build this again or a copy of this again when they are coming up with a new feature or they're building a new feature. So reusability is becomes a core proponent of, like, of your development process, and it increases the productivity of the developers so much, like especially if they're defined, right? So just imagine you're in Ola, and you have a partner onboarding system. You also have your payment APIs, then you have your allocation APIs. But in order for the system to kind of actually give a cap to the rider, all of these systems needs to talk to each other. And if you're developing a new feature, then if you don't have well-defined APIs, your developer wouldn't necessarily have to know the underpinnings of each of the system and understand what is the complexity or the nitty-gritties of each of this service. But if you have well-defined APIs, right, like you could easily separate these concerns, and you could actually hide the complexity that is there beneath each of these systems. So a front-end developer need not know how the cards are processed, where they are saved, etc. All they need to know is, hey, here's like the endpoint I need to hit so that I can populate the necessary information onto the user screen, right?
So,
So
so mostly the efforts for building a good internal API infrastructure or architecture is to make your development the resources more efficient. So there is no public advantage to this, right? So this is about how can you make an efficient a developer, how can you manage the code base easily, how can the teams interact more efficiently with abstraction. So this is all there is
exactly.
to optimize internally, or does it have a business advantage also on the outside?
Oh yeah, I mean, while it does streamline like your internal development activities, more often than not, the APIs, the internal APIs are also the some of your internal APIs will also be the the core blocks of what you expose outside. So
Mhm.
they're also the ones who are powering the public APIs, right? So internal APIs are your foundational building blocks. Uh, but if you don't get these right, probably you're not going to get like the public or the partner APIs also right, because it's the entire value chain, right? What you build inside also gets structured, restructured, and then presented to the external world in a different format. But while the APIs are used internally, they are also powering these external APIs, and yes, they have implications, right? And it's more about like a philosophy, right? Like having this microservices or API first driven approach, right? It is something that you build the foundation on, and like development as a philosophy, and that's what gets exposed outside as well. So if you do this right, you're probably going to get your partner and public APIs also very, very, very well done.
Got it. So API first approach does not just mean with a good public API strategy, but also internal APIs. So that is very
Exactly.
much part of API first approach. Okay.
Yes, because at the end of the day, even your public and partner APIs are talking to internal systems, right? And
Mhm.
if they're not designed properly, any issue or any error or any scalability issues point right back to your internal systems, right?
Got it.
So it just makes sense to kind of start thinking from an API first perspective, and
Got
it makes you more agile, not just in terms of speed, productivity, but also in terms of collaboration, right? Now just imagine that you have these so many internal services there, easily accessible to other developers using well-defined APIs. Your developers and product managers can think more creatively in terms of ideas, and they can collaborate on what they can build on top of each other, right?
it.
And that makes it so much more productive. And yeah, if you are able to remove all of these hurdles by making sure and that you have a API first approach, your uh, a lot of things get ironed out, right? And your speed to market improves. So your deployment, your governance of your APIs, the security layer that you build on top of your APIs, you're not building this for each of the systems. You're just now doing it as a as one common layer for all your services.
So usually, what should be the approach? I mean, suppose there is a new team that is building a component. Does every component needs to be separate microservice or abstracted with other teams, or only when you see a potential of that component getting complex and complicated, should you think of abstracting it and exposing it only through APIs? Is there a guiding principle or a rule of thumb, or everything should be API based and all interaction should be API? And is there a cost to it?
Uh, yeah, definitely. There's like don't build a microservice. I mean, like first of all, architect is a much better position to answer this question rather than me. But I'm just speaking out of like what I've known from my interactions with my team and fellow architects. So the thing is basically don't just create a microservice for the sake of creating it, right? Like the whole idea is to have one component that is very well defined and can be reusable, right? Like that's the foundational principle. And
Okay.
if you have a if you have a order management system, and like something which is just receiving let's say information regarding an order, and it is saying that can you call the shipment API and send this package to this address, right? Like, so all the shipment API is doing is taking the address of that person, maybe the weight of the package, and it's making sure that this is sent to another system for delivery, right?
Got
So it's kind of very well defined, and those are the systems that you should make into a separate service. But then again, again, it comes down to how the architects want to design it. They have a choice into what should be a microservice.
got it.
But yeah, just don't create so many services, because
Over here.
managing them will be a problem, because it also increases the overhead in terms of maintenance,
Right.
and you might increase the number of failure points, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the
So this reminds me of the famous Jeff Bezos email that he sent out to all his employees to stick to microservices, to stick to API and microservices. And he said that any team that is not adhering to abstraction and API and microservices will be fired. And due to that decision, he enforced it. And after a couple of years, that went on to become AWS, and it became a business by itself that overgrew so much that it made more money than their core business of selling products on Amazon. So I completely get that.
Yeah, I think Jeff's. I mean, I'm no one to speak on regarding Jeff's decisions, but yeah, they faced common problem, right? Like, and he's a very structural thinker, and he was thinking from first principles, right? Like, the problem was they had this huge system, and when they wanted to kind of do many deployments in Amazon and different merchant pages, or different applications. They kind of had to align beforehand with the development teams, and that deployment time just only became increasing. And so over a period of time, they said, how could we, you know, break this dependency, and that's where the move to kind of microservices happened. And you're absolutely right, and that increased their speed of delivery multifold, and they got a new business out of it, right?
Got it.
So
Excellent. Let's move to public APIs, the more
yep.
exciting side of APIs.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is more about, like, you know, how do we take something that we've built and give it to people outside in a more consumable fashion, and that's where the new age businesses are being driven, and this has been happening over the last decade or so. And there have been early champions like Twilio, Stripe, Braintree, and all of these companies who've you've kind of had this external API strategy, so that they can increase the surface area of their offering, right? When it comes to PMs, like, we start thinking about in terms of number of clients. That is, hey, can we get a website or a dashboard done so that people can access it from their computers, or should we do a iOS or an Android application? And that kind of limits our perspective into the entry points that our users can have, right? With the advent of the rise in SaaS applications, as well as the number of IoT devices, the surface area is vastly increased. Like, you never know where your next user will come from. It might be that this user has discovered this on a kiosk screen in a railway station too, or they have seen this inside a SaaS application, or they have seen this on a partner website, right? It's just, you have no idea where your next user comes from, or via which channel your user would come from, right? And that's where, like, this connective tissues becomes important, and the APIs are powering this kind of outreach to different interfaces. So yeah, having an external API strategy is very important. It gets you new customers, so your annual run rate is high. You have multiple touch points with your partners. You can actually engage them now on different applications or different devices, or different platforms altogether. And you can also drive strategic initiatives with partners, and actually bring out a synergic value proposition to your users, right?
Got it. And this is the biggest aha moment for me. Okay, when I realized the power of API and the constraint of selling standalone products, because as product managers, as I already mentioned in the introduction, we are asked, we were trained to sell products about a UX, great design and stuff like that, which is good. Okay, it has its own place, but if you want to expose yourself to a larger surface area, as you said, you you never know what your target audience world is, what is the endpoint they are using, what is their ecosystem, what is their platform.
Yeah,
And sometimes your uh, UI based product, standalone product, might not fit into their world, and as a
definitely.
result your acceptance or adoption might take a hit. So if you want to make yourself easy to be adopted into their environment, no matter what it is best to expose yourself as an API and offer API as a product. Did I summarize it
Yeah.
well? This was my aha moment.
Definitely. Like I said, with the rise of SaaS application and IoT device, you don't have to constrain yourself to the traditional interfaces anymore, right? And that's the aha moment a lot of uh, uh, PMs and companies are having today. That how is it that we can extend this reach beyond the web, iOS, Android frameworks?
Got it. Excellent.
Right, and so one of the things that like naturally is the next question is, why do I need to even build a API program, right? Like, what are the benefits? How do we approach it, right? And there are different advantages to this. If you're a company who has who's already worked on a really hard problem, and they've solved a uh, solved a really interesting problem, and they have a value offering. You can literally create new businesses altogether, right? And just with the API first strategy, and like we touched upon, AWS did exactly the same thing. They wanted to launch an e-commerce service, and because of their internal restrictions, it became a lot harder as they went about like breaking it into microservices, and breaking their monoliths into microservices, and increasing the speed of delivery. They figured out that, hey, this system now can be leveraged by people outside, and that's when they came up with like an entirely new business altogether, powered just by APIs, right? Uh, the other thing is, you can disrupt existing markets, right? Like, so sending out a SMS, like I don't know if our generation of PMs have ever faced, the new generation of PMs have ever faced this, but about like uh, 10-12 years back, sending out a SMS was a big problem. You had to talk to the carrier to figure out what protocol they were using, what packet information was, and what is the encoding that you kind of had to set up. Twilio kind of abstracted all of this out and gave you like this powerful API where you could just like send the content of the SMS and to which number you want to send it, right? And they made it so simple. and they just disrupted the entire telecommunication space, right? Like, so now if it's so natural for us to think about, if you want to send a SMS or an email, or we just like, hey, there's Twilio, and they just disrupted the entire existing telecommunication market. And when they went about it API first, right? And the early prospective investors said, hey, you're preaching to the wrong audience. You have the wrong market and the wrong user, but we know better right now, right? And they just focused on just getting it sold to the developer persona, right? They just focused on how do we know that we are a very transactional system, but how do we just get this embedded within like the workflow of different applications? And that's why a lot of their choices were made around being API first.
Got it.
Uh, you can also use like API programs to create differentiation in a concentrated market, right? When Stripe came out, like it was not the only player in the payment space. There were tons of other payment solution providers, whether it's Braintree. All of these guys were already there. But where Stripe came in, I think it started out as slash dev slash finance, and that they were right there. Like they just started with the API first strategy, and they said, hey, this is how we're going to create differentiation in this concentrated market, right? And they iterated multiple times on the first set of APIs, and uh, we now know that they're the best, in fact, API program out there, right? And they made integration of payments super easy and simple, right? And the fourth thing is driving meaningful partnerships. So
So,
this is yeah,
before we come to SIgnEasy, uh,
yeah.
so could you? So I still fail to understand when we say Stripe is the best example in providing API, external APIs. What was so distinctive about Stripe that other players did not have?
I think one thing that Stripe did beautifully was focus on the developer persona really well, and simplifying the whole process down. And we'll be touching upon this later.
Got it. Got it.
But one thing, they had core API design principles that focused on simplicity, composability, and flexibility of the APIs, and their documentation was so well written, right? And if you had a question about how this might work, it probably got answered in the very next line or the third line after it, right?
Right.
And Stripe did this really well. They actually focused on the entire developer journey. They gave them uh, good documentation, good guides on how to get started, good tools, right? Like software development kits and everything, so that it's flexible to like the capabilities of different developers and the stacks that they are building on top of, right? Or integrating with. And they did this very, very well. And that's where I think like Stripe kind of made sure uh, 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 they were simplifying all the offerings to the users.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, we are gonna talk about it in one of your slides.
Yeah.
Good. Let's come to SIgnEasy.
Yeah. So I think like the fourth thing is driving meaningful partnerships, right? So a lot of times, like I said, like the surface area of where the user is today, or how they are accessing your functionality is has definitely increased, right? And we want to make sure that we are present where our users are present. Like they might be one user might be opening up their Windows laptop, logging into Microsoft Teams, and then the first thing they're doing is collaborating with different stakeholders via Teams, right? Like, so we kind of wanted to think, how do we make sure our product is available within Microsoft Teams? If you're talking to another salesperson, right? Like when and who's trying to meet their monthly quota of sales, and they're just sitting inside Salesforce, tracking their opportunities and sending out contracts to them. how could we make sure that SIgnEasy was present in Salesforce and it was used by the salesperson to send out different contracts, right? Or if it is an individual solopreneur or a very small business or even a small and medium business, they might be relying on the Google ecosystem, right? How do we make sure we are there in like the in Gmail, so that people are able to send out contracts for signature within the Google ecosystem. I think it's about, if you don't have a API program, what you will start doing is fundamentally building out point or native integrations for each of these ecosystems. And trust me, there are a lot of these integrations. And if you don't have these reusable APIs or reusable functionalities exposed via APIs, it's going to be a maintenance nightmare, and you're not going to be able to deliver so quickly, right?
Got
So
it.
that's the whole thing of driving these meaningful partnerships with external partners, and that becomes so important.
Got it.
So we've touched upon this earlier, so I can just deep dive into what I've experienced at SIgnEasy, and I've seen this, that like our APIs actually drive significant value for our customers, right? And one of the thing is, we were earlier present in iOS, a phone or a laptop, right? Like through via the web. But as and when, like, we started gathering more users, we found that they are interested in streamlining their work. Their origination of workflows happened in some other tool, and they wanted us to be present over there, so that they're not handling like 4 to 5 different applications, right? That becomes a nightmare for them, and they wanted to see if we could be present in the tools that they kind of commonly used. And we came up with APIs to kind of help us tackle that problem really well. And it just made our users so sticky, right? One of the things which was there earlier, if you're present across different applications, your customers are going to love your product, and they're necessarily not going to move on. And one thing is, if you're in their favorite tools, and this is when I realized one of the more aha moment, right? Like, if you have your own web application or you're just available on the phone, is you're just selling to that person individually. But if you are available in a software application tool, your user base now has just increased, right? Now you can just sell to the entire team, and you can provide visibility of your application to the entire team. Or you can do a install actually company wide, right? Like, do a wall to wall install or a cubicle to cubicle install.
So it's a growth lever, no? It's like
Exactly.
it's a leverage point to grow as much as possible, uh, to reach out to as many users as possible than in a standalone device for one user.
Correct, correct. Because and your users are happy now that it's there in the tools that they leverage most, and for you, it's getting more users as well, right?
Got it.
So it's that is, and we've seen this happen over and over and again. And different ecosystem provides you access to different kind of user base, right? And it helps you get deliver the value, obviously, but also collect feedback from them, and understand how different kind of users think as well, right?
Got it.
So again, this is the shift that is currently happening, right? I mean, even with the recent acquisition of Notion with the uh, I think it's automate.io, right? Like, Notion acquired this companies to see how different tools can integrate within Notion, as well as how, if they can take Notion out to different places as well, right? So it's not just about like people coming to your ecosystem anymore. Like, how can you be present in where the users are working? And
Got
that's
it.
becoming more
Yeah.
important because the workflows are spread across different applications.
Yeah. So be
Uh,
don't ask your customers to come to you. Be where your users are, isn't it? That's the shift.
yes, I think you've summarized it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I'd be more happy to have one less application to use, right?
Got it. Yeah.
As a user, personally myself, right? Uh,
Got it.
and this once we kind of saw initial success around this, and we like built out these integrations, learned from our integrations, we've dog fooded our own APIs. That's when we thought like, hey, can we do this with like other partners or our existing customers as well, right? And that's where the actual API program just took off. Like, um, a lot of us don't know where to start. How do we even like get think about the APIs, right? So the way we did that was we actually kind of asked our sales team to kind of start talking to our existing customers who are using the SaaS platform to see if they're interested in the API program, and that's when we started getting interest from a lot of customers and our existing customers, and then we
So
started.
your existing SaaS customers, you approach them to ask
Yeah.
if an API solution would be much more valuable to them than the SaaS product. Is that how it is?
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, we just asked them a simple question: how can we help streamline different workflows within your application, right? Like, uh, uh, and and they were like, yes, why don't you share the documentation? We'll take it out for a spin. And at this point, we didn't have a public facing API program at all, right? Like, and this
Got
was
it.
all internal. It was in a beta state, and that's where we work with like 10 to 15 um, uh, 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 customers and really worked on maturing the platform, and we still do that to this day. Your customers really want to talk to you, and they want to tell you what they exactly want.
Got
So
it.
that's one reward that you have with API programs, right? If you've given value to the customers and they want more value, they'll actually tell you what they need,
Got
right?
it.
And your product more roadmap is more about prioritization rather than discovery, right?
So your roadmap is guided by their immediate needs. So they guide you
Exactly.
what to build next and stuff like that. So
Yeah, you will have your backlog from them,
right.
right? And they're very much open to talking, right? Like, I've spoken to a lot of PMs who've told me, hey, how do you solve this problem? Users don't want to talk to you, right? And like either and one thing is, as a PM you need to be constantly talking to them, right? Uh, I mean, you should have at least like interaction every day, if not at least like 3 to 4 in a week, right?
Got it.
Because that's what tells you how your product is performing actually on the ground. Perception, like the value delivery, and also what can be improved in the existing product. I think that becomes very important. But yeah, we've kind of partnered with them, and we've realized that we were able to uh, give much better value add for them, and to their end users, right? Like, once they integrated us, they were able to redefine their journeys for their end customers, and that's when it became like a force multiplier. Because we were able to bring so much delight to their end customers, they were able to acquire more users, we were able to grow with them, right? And we've seen this across different sectors. We were able to see this across real estate, HR onboarding, and fintech, and we now have multiple ESOP management applications and cap table management applications use us to drive their signature needs, right?
Got it.
And with the COVID tailwinds and remote working, I think no one sends a document for signature through the traditional mailing route, right? Like, or
Got
printing and mailing it. They now rely on systems like us to get it done,
it.
and this has actually helped us, like increase multifold. in the last 12 months or so.
So are you saying you evolved your business from a SaaS model to API first model? Has that become more prominent?
Yes. I mean, like our thought process has changed. Earlier, it was more about uh, also because like the way we started out was another inflection point. We were when the world started getting mobile first.
Hmm.
That is, we built our application when mobiles were taking off, and we really focused on iOS. Like we've that was our prime focus, and we focused on individuals. But as we grew and we added more interfaces, these interfaces were only bound to grow, and as we added more and more users, we started realizing, you know APIs are going to be very, very important. They are providing the flexibility to our users to use our application in whichever application they want, right?
Hmm.
And we started moving towards that shift. We are significantly there in our strategy. We are our development principles have also changed, right? Like we are becoming more and more API first, and that's a transition we are currently undergoing here at Science.
Got it. So is it like a 40-60 split or a 20-80 split? How would you say the split between SaaS and API? Or are
It
you become or you're trying to become 100% API, or how do you make a
No, I
strategy?
think yeah, definitely your portfolio mix is going to be important, right? Like as to uh, your SaaS, how much revenue you get from SaaS versus API. It's all going to differ, right? Like based on the positioning and the resources you put in, right? But I think it is something that will the API usage, the API share in the revenue mix is only going to increase, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's I mean, some like businesses have shown us it can be 100%, right? Shown us like Stripe Twilio have shown us 100%, but that's a API first strategy. But looking at it, like in the future, it definitely will be around 50 to 60%. So if you take the example of Salesforce, 50% is driven by the API programs that they have, right, and the integration programs that they have. So it can go up to that as well in the SaaS piece.
But
But
also
yeah,
it would also depend upon who the end user is, right? Because if an end user is a consumer, then he would not have the requisite resources to build an integration to his existing
exactly,
platform and stuff like that. So it is always
exactly.
going to be a split wherein only those customers who can afford to run a project for integration, or do you also support customers towards integrating with your API if they do not have the knowledge?
So, like I said, we support that, and it's only gotten easier, right? We are trying to simplify APIs from our side, but also there are no-code platforms that are reducing the implementation barrier,
Got
right?
it.
If you expose APIs, like you have tools like Zapier, IFTTT, or Microsoft Power Automate, all of these are coming up with ways how you can consume, different functionalities in workflows, and the person who is using it at the other end need not be a developer always.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. This is great. So the world is getting easier, simpler, and we could at some given point of time we could get rid of implementation or integration experts with the help of no code tools.
Exactly. I mean, there is different value at different approaches. Like no code, it's easier, but it might constrain you in terms of flexibility. But if you want more powerful, more flexible features, you might look at again getting an implementation team and getting developers to kind of build it out for you.
Got it.
So there needs to be like a trade-off over there.
Got it.
Yeah, I think
Developers.
uh, that's coming to the next question, right? I think this is where I significantly lacked about like 4 years back, like from my personal experience. Um, is I didn't understand how the world was changing in terms of uh, uh, the API driven platform. So earlier, when you were selling software, you were selling to a line manager, you were like selling to maybe a CXO, or you were selling to a department head, right? And that was the buyer persona that was there. And now there's a new entrant to this whole purchase making decision making process, right? Like you have developers who are now at the table, and they are important in driving the buying decisions and the implementation decisions, right? They're the new buyer decision maker, and they're key stakeholders on what the businesses are doing, right? You have small teams of developers now who can deploy massive systems, right? And they can really affect change at scale. Zerodha is a team of 30 engineers, and it's reaching out to millions of traders out there, right? So what a developer or a set of developers can do today has significantly changed, right? And they've moved from just software only to now to driving business transformation changes, right?
No, but
and
help me
and
understand. Help me understand. But we are talking developers will only have influence in buying decision of developer tools. No, not all software is developer tools. There are software that could be a business software or an analytics software or a BI tool or a self-service analytics, which is not developer oriented but mostly user oriented. So
right.
are you focusing on developer tools for developers or all kinds of tools or
I'm focusing on all kind of tools, right? Just take the example of Twilio, right? Like, and this is the thought process that would have, or even the case of Stripe, right? If now if a PM goes and says, "Hey, we're launching this new feature, and you need to kind of make sure that this payment is supported," where do you think he's going to go out and talk to, right? He's going to talk to a developer and asking him, "Hey, have you checked out Stripe? Does it support this? Does it support subscriptions? Does it support a rewards program? Can you see if I can pull out the data from Stripe into my Microsoft BI dashboard and populate it there, right?" So in all of these conversations, I'm going to my developer and brainstorming with them on different solution providers out there, and I'm trying to understand if whether it makes sense from the functionality perspective, whether it makes sense from data perspective, whether it makes sense from a cost perspective. And then I'm also going to ask him or work out with him what is the cost of this integration, right? In terms of implementation, not necessarily, per transaction, what is going to be the cost. I'm going to sit with him or her and kind of understand that how my if we purchase this, is it easy to implement, is it easy to maintain, and at all of these points, you see my key stakeholder is the developer, right? And
Hmm.
this is just about like a payments. But if you now think about everything, like within even whether it's like a e-signature app, you are talking to your developers to see how you can drive transformation change across all the products, uh, or how can you aggregate all the products to work together in a workflow, right? And as adoption of different tools increases, like this is going to be more prominent, right? Like developers being the key stakeholder in the decision. This is not just about making a decision on whether you need to use GitHub versus GitLab, or
Hmm.
whether this is no longer that. Those are enablement tools for your developer, but once they're enabled, they're going to be also driving transformational change within your organization.
No, This is something new for me. Okay, I read a lot of content on how developer ecosystem is gaining influence, how developers are gaining influence. I never got to understand, never had the time to dig deeper. So I now see your point. Because I felt, okay, a SaaS product is mostly web enabled. If it's a simple BI dashboard for CEOs, and you sell a product like that, why would a developer be an influencer? But what you are saying is any kind of integrations and any kind of enablement and any kind of how a product would suit in their existing ecosystem, for those conversations a developer is always a subject matter expert to evaluate and give them their feedback, isn't it? um
Yes, exactly.
mm,
And
get
as you're integrating more systems into together, so if you look at a look at a typical SaaS company, right? Like, what are the different stacks that they have? Like, and I'm going to only scratch the surface, right? They're going to have a subscription management software. They're going to have a sales management tool. They're going to have, like, social media management tool. They're going to have internal BI dashboards. They're going to have instrumentation for their products, whether it's mixed panel. You're going to have like a optimize A/B testing tool, right? And they're going to have internal communications, like, or collaboration platforms, whether it's Slack or anything. But if you look at this entire stack, right, they're all disparate systems where they're not talking to each other.
mm,
But as in when maturity grows, right, like, just imagine if you wanted to a new sale to be notified, new purchase to be notified to your sales team, you would go and look for a Slack integration with, say, HubSpot, Salesforce, or anything, right?
right. Mm.
And those are becoming key decisions, like either they're provided out of the box, or you would look for your development team to enable that kind of integration, right? How
You're
do
you're so right, because yeah, I mean, it's already in existence. So we do not want any product which is not integrating with Slack, because Slack is our hub for communication. And we do not want to open another browser and go and check that product. So we would want, if there are two proposals on our table, two competitors for a certain product, we would want to take the bet on that product which can integrate with Slack, isn't it? So this is a simple
exactly.
example of how integrations and for this decision, a developer would be required, because he would see how seamless is the integration, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely not in the case of Slack. I mean, but if you're looking at, like, because if you're looking at like a analytics dashboard, right? Like, now you will require, like, if the product team was looking at mixed panel, right? They're going to say, hey, how can I pull out the information with mixed panel, dump it into my central data warehouse, so that it's also, so I can prepare a custom report using BI tools, so that I can visualize both the customer journeys, but also what it is leading to in terms of purchase patterns, right? Because my purchase patterns are decided by something else, and then I have like A/B optimize A/B testing tool in between. So all of these are different systems doing different things, but they're solving a core, but they provide visibility into the customer journey, right? And you will not have a complete picture of them if you don't have all the data together. Now,
Got
how
it.
do you do that? You have to pull that together, put it on in the same place, and so that you can stitch this together. And the way you're going to pull this out is via APIs. And
Got it.
now you're going to have a discussion with your team saying, hey, does this product have that maturity? Can I pull this data out, etc., right? So
Got
it
it.
becomes very important.
So what's the bigger point for this slide? So developers are new influencer. I get that.
I
So
mean,
what should we do? Should we just what's the point? Like, should
no,
we empower them, or what's the point here?
no, I think, like, that's where I mean, we are definitely empowering them, right? Like, but what we need to understand is, the identity of the seller has changed. Oh, sorry, the buyer has changed.
Right.
uh, as PMs, now we need to understand that we might be speaking to a newer persona that we're not acquainted with, and
Okay.
that's something which becomes even more important in when you are building out a API program,
Got it.
because this is the main persona that you will be interacting with. And if you think that you don't want to have an API strategy, you might want to like look at how this is the business ecosystem is changing now, right? Like, because
It's a good one.
you
Huh? This is again an aha moment for me. I'm just thinking that I should leave a message to my UX designers that we have a different persona. This is not the personas that we have in the UX team, the buyer persona and the user persona. We are forgetting the developer persona. So let's focus on a developer persona, define what his needs are, what his frustrations are, and then map and provide solutions to his needs. So this was again a big aha moment for me. Thank you.
correct. And one of the things is like one of my sources of inspiration and like thought leadership is Tyler. I think everyone should check out his blogs on APIs and developer landscape. What he has an interesting point in the next few years. Like, it'll be this persona who will be deciding the market leaders, right?
Mm,
And the reason why is because most of the software is definitely infrastructure got commoditized, and developers chose the market leaders, whether it's AWS or Microsoft or Google GCP, right?
mm.
They chose the market leaders. Now, when it comes to SaaS applications, we've seen that happen in a few industries such as payments, telecommunications. We are seeing that in other places as well. But now, as API first development becomes more and more prominent, and even these SaaS functionalities start getting commoditized, you will start to see that they'll be deciding the future leaders in the for the time to come,
Got
Ravi.
it.
I think that's what we need to take away as
Got it.
key thing from
Excellent. Massive learning here. Thank you so much, Vijay.
it. So, I mean, now that you have the persona in perspective, right? Like, and you understand what the value it can bring, what a value API program can bring, and how they can help you, and how you can adopt different strategies. You need to kind of decide like what is your offering, right? What is right for your business? Uh, 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 do I just use my APIs to provide white label data, and or do I like provide just a transactional business value, right? Like, where it can in the realm of payments, it's definitely Stripe. Or the third thing, which I alluded to before, is providing additional benefit with my existing enterprise plans or existing offering that I have, right? So I can provide APIs as an extra value or add-on to generate extra revenue,
Do
right?
you have an
And
example of providing additional benefit with APIs to an existing customer?
right. So let's take most of the SaaS tools, right? Like, when they have, and here we can take the example of Salesforce, right? And if you go to their plans page, right, like you will see that they have an essentials plan, which is they have individual essentials and some sort of an enterprise plan, right? And the thing is, when you have these three plans are catered to different users and the size of the companies, right? But what you'll also notice is that the amount that you can value you can charge is fixed with each one of them. So there's no add-on or additional revenue that you can generate once you've provided this plan. So Salesforce knows that their CRM is one of the central systems, and it talks to multiple other systems within an organization. It might be talking to analytics software. It might be that it is talking to different mailing systems. It might be talking to different purchase systems, or a ERP, or a customer satisfaction software, or a support software, right? And it's touching a lot of this. And when you want to make such connections happen between different ecosystems, what they've said is that, here, if you want to enable communications between different uh, tools, here's an enterprise plan. It also comes with, like, the APIs that you can use, and we're going to charge you based on the usage. So now what they have done is they have told, the small and medium business company to upgrade to an enterprise plan, so that they can start using the APIs. And they actually so they move the customer to a higher plan. And also they've they've added a variable pricing component to it, right? Like, now you charge on usage, not just on subscription.
Got it. Got it. So there is a subscription price, definitely a component, and then you add a number of API calls based on that volume. You add a, so it's a good monetization upselling as well opportunity.
Exactly, because like I said, the systems are getting more and more interconnected, and they need to talk to each other. And via APIs, they're either moving customers to a bigger plan, or uh, they are monetizing this through, like, usage. And I feel that as time goes by, APIs will become a part of the base offering,
Okay.
because it's going to be it's going to move towards that trend,
It will be a deal
right?
breaker. So, I mean, nobody would
Exactly,
want to buy if you don't have also an API. Okay.
exactly,
Got it.
exactly.
Excellent.
Right. And the fourth one is, if you are one of the bigger majors, right, and you're building ecosystems, so Google, Microsoft, API, Apple, they definitely are ecosystems. And in order to plug into those ecosystems, they leverage their APIs. If you want to include Face ID, you're either talking to the SDKs, etc., right? Like, so within your application. So if you want to build ecosystems, I think that's another flavor. And the fifth one, I think, which most of the social media giants have already done, is provide multiple entry points to their application. So how do you you already know that you have a wide user base, but how do you increase the distribution even further, right? So how do you make sure that people discover Twitter through a media article, or they discover through a hoarding, or through a billboard, right? Like, how do you make such things happen? You provide APIs, or this publisher APIs, that help you take your tweet and embed it within a website or a app very easily, right? Helping users to kind of providing visibility to your platform, and taking users from that media article back to Twitter, so that you can see more tweets.
Got it. I want to again double tap on building ecosystems, and this I have seen as a pattern in many large organizations. Like Twitter has a very good developer ecosystem, and in one of my past companies, Autodesk has had a developer ecosystem, and very strategically they build this ecosystem of developers who can use these APIs, and you build products using these APIs on top of these APIs. Like this, there are so many Twitter applications built by these small developers, uh, and then they see how the community is growing, who is innovating with these APIs with this, and then they see, okay, and then they gradually see, once they have a very robust ecosystem, they would see that somebody is building a big a product in a small niche, and then that becomes attractive for this large organization to go and buy
Exactly.
out. because they will never be able to afford so many innovations within their own company. So they expose it, they create a developer ecosystems, and then they just monitor who is building something cool and what is growing, and then something of potential, if it grows, they go and acquire that. As I think Twitter acquired TweetDeck, I'm not very sure, but this is exactly
Yeah.
what they did.
Exactly, and you're very right in seeing that, right? Like so, I think once you expose the ecosystem, you know where the market is moving, where is it, which idea is it that generating a lot of value, and you keep an eye on it, and either becomes an acquisition target or you build it out yourself, right? Like,
Yeah,
and that's how these bigger ecosystems are also thriving,
yeah,
not
great,
just as an enablement platform, but also as a source of different ideas.
got it.
So yeah, I mean, like one of the important questions which follows that is, now that I know what what could potentially become like my API offering. I think the next question is like, should I start, or when should I start, right? Like, I think and one caveat over here is, definitely you need to realize you will not get it right the first time. Um,
And when
uh,
you say should I start, this is after having a SaaS offering. You
exactly,
start thinking, okay, now I have a SaaS offering, I have a few customers. Now should I start an API program? Is that the context?
exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
got it.
yes, and also the other thing is, when do I make it public, right? And the um, that's more important. I think once you have you're always going to do a beta. You're always going to reach out to your initial customers and experiment with them and figure that thing out, right? But also, this is more in terms of, when is it that I want to take it public as well. That is also the second question that follows after you answer, should I start an API program? I think one key thing is, you need to understand your current market, and you need to understand what is the additional revenue it is going to drive, right? And will it get closer to my goals in terms of the ARR goal that I'm chasing, or whether it's the adoption goal that I'm chasing, or the retention goal that I'm chasing, right? So I think these are important questions that you need to answer, and working with your initial customers, you will get an idea of what is the value that you're primarily driving for each of these customers, and then actually go deeper into the verticals that your customers belong to, and see if there is a wider market out there. Right, that's one way to kind of do it yourself via first principles, especially if you are already in a niche. But if you're in a already existing market and this has been done before, I think you can also bring in competitor analysis into the mix, and try to understand how well you can position, or the differentiation that you can create, because it's obviously going to answer your questions about the current market and the additional revenue it might potentially bring, right? And so those questions are answered. So it depends. The questions kind of vary, but this is really important to kind of brainstorm with your leadership team as well as fellow PMs, to understand, like, what is the current market, the additional revenue it's going to bring, and whether it will help me get closer to my goals,
So
right?
are there some business case templates on, because this is again a business model that you need to investigate, right? So for like, okay, if you're exposing this, how do you want to price your APIs, and what is the market opportunity, and what is the expected revenue, and this is how the calculation would go, right?
Yeah, I think there's enough literature, I think, available outside. In terms of, this is typical, most of the pricing, the market, the target addressable market discussions, and all of that are going to be very similar to how you would look at it for any other SaaS application as well, right?
Got
It's not going to differ as much for API products. But this is to highlight like why it is important to kind of understand these things before you go into a full-fledged program, right?
No, no, but still, I also feel that what endpoints are monetizable. This is very different from selling
Oh
a
yeah,
SaaS product, right? So, okay, how do
exactly,
you monetize, and how do you track? Okay, what interaction points have to be monetized? What is free and what is not? And this is a
exactly,
different ball game altogether. So, is that, first of all,
right.
if somebody who's listening to this and he listens to all this architecture, all this theoretical content, and he goes to workplace tomorrow and wants to apply this, where can he get started? I mean, are there books, or are there, and somebody who has no experience with APIs, but he wants to be now proactively manage the
Yeah.
opportunity for API, what can he do?
I think there's like a wonderful literature on this on Stripe sessions, which is there online. Twilio also has enough sessions on like the API product management and like how to get started on a API program, right?
Got it.
And these are definitely two very well very good resources for someone to actually go and explore how to get into the technical details of which endpoints, what do I monetize, whether it is monetizable, and how do I monetize it, right? Should I give a freemium model? Like, should I start with uh, um, a free sandbox and then based on the amount of calls that they are making per month, should I set a limit and then start the paid plans? Right, these are
Got it.
all very interesting questions that you need answers to, but I think there is enough literature for someone to go and actually look at these things and build on top of them.
And is Vijay, is your role doing this? Do you make these decisions as part of your role, or any
Oh
API
yes.
product manager, is this the core of his job?
Yes, I think like the PMs have to understand the market. They have to get into the technical details of understanding what is the API endpoint and how it should be designed. And yes, you're working when the design part comes, you're working with your architects and developers, but you need to be in the know-how of it. And also, as a PM, like any other SaaS product, you are a key participant and stakeholder in the pricing decision,
Got
right?
it.
What is the pricing model? What is the GTM? Everything, right? Like, and this is what I do day in and day out,
Excellent, thank you so much.
right?
So
So
next is beta with your existing customers.
yeah, so I said like you chances are you're not going to get it right the first time, right? Because what you need to realize is the developer mindset is as varied as it can be, right? Like the individuals, they are working in different industries, different sectors, right? So your audience is very wide, but how do you work with a representative set to kind of understand what might be the different implementation patterns and the range of understanding of each of the developer? You need to actually get a sense of it before you maybe send it out to expose it out to a global audience, right? And these are some of the learnings that can't be theoretical. They need to be actually coming from the ground, right? And you need to understand that you could work with your top customers who are already using either one of your products, or if not, you'll need to at least get like a few beta customers to actually co-develop the solution with them, right? If you already have an existing sales team, you could ask them to propose a API offering and see if anyone is looking towards this, towards integrating the APIs within their platform, right? And you actually the other thing might be that you can take the crude approach of like just launching few of the uh, internal APIs, but like not taking that exposing it with external facing documents and see if there is interest or signups, right?
Right. Mhm.
And actually work with them. or you can actually leverage API marketplaces such as Postman, Rapid API, Amazon partner programs, and all of this to see if you can get beta customers from there.
Mm. So this is just like introducing or launching any product. You test out, you see how many signups are there, and you launch an MVP, isn't it? Mm,
Right. Yeah, but you're also working with the existing customers to get a lot of feedback on the APIs, right?
got it. Okay.
Because that's very important. The reason why the beta is important is if you have a public launch and you have a lot of customers actually take up your product, right? And you realize like maybe the fifth or sixth customer down the line, the requirement is fundamentally very different, and there is a valid input from the user, right? You just can't go back to the drawing board and change the APIs, because then you would have affected the five other customers and you will be in a conversation with them to migrate your APIs,
Got it.
right? So you've automatically introduced tech debt into into your customers roadmap, right? So that's something which we have to be very very careful about, and that's why the beta is very important, right? Like that, you need to understand the fact that you need to be very sure about like when you want to make it public.
Got it. Excellent. Next.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Vijay, you're muted, Vijay. You're muted. Yeah. So you just have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my headphones ran out of charge.
No, you're sounding okay. You're perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So the other thing is you need to kind of be ready for overheads, right? Is your once you're thinking about like once you've gone beyond that decision of should I start the API program, after you brainstormed your competitor landscape, you know that there's a market opportunity, and you know that your beta with your existing customers has gone well. You also need to be prepared for the overheads, right? uh, the Here you're going to have different kind of people who are going to play important role in not just the development but also delivery of the API platform, right? One thing is your core infrastructure might not be ready yet, so you might need to overhaul a few things, right? Like suppose if you don't have a API gateway at your end, you don't have security policies at your end, you don't have let's say if you're a global um, um, a global service provider, is GDPR kind of enabled, factored into your APIs, right? Like so it might be that your infrastructure might not be ready, and so hence you might want to see, like, after incorporating all of this, when do you make it exposed, right? That's very important, because working with your beta customers, you definitely can, you trust, there's a level of mutual trust that exists between both of them. But when you have a public uh, um, release or a general availability release, you need to understand that your infrastructure needs to be right, and you
So
need
are
to
there
have.
any infrastructure tools or tool sets or frameworks that are popular that are used which takes care of most of these, like gateways and policies and
Yes.
stuff?
So you have the APG gateway, AWS API gateway. You have, I think, you know, now you have Postman API management tools as well. That's kind of managing the internal software development lifecycle, as well as the policies for setting up these policies for external partners as well.
So I have seen small startups, they don't have APG, they just manage it by themselves. At what stage do you need something like APG?
I think APG is more on, like, the enterprise side of things. So if you're more than like 100 million million API requests a day, I think that's when you should start considering such tools. But if you're a smaller startup, you could look at few open source initiatives already available over there, or you could leverage something such as like the Amazon API gateway, right? That's again based on usage, and um, it's a great place to start from there. And also, there are few open source free tools like Kong out there that can really help you with this,
Got it. Excellent. Thank you.
right? So yeah, your infrastructure might not be ready, but make sure that you're set up for success over here. Second, you need to resource yourself properly, right? You need to have your technical product managers and architects in place, uh, with 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 dedicated who are dedicatedly looking at the API program. It's not someone else's night job or evening job, right? It's not your second gig. Like, so you need to make sure that your API programs adequately staffed, and there are people looking into this on a daily basis, right? And the third thing is, when you start off, you need to understand that you are going to handhold your customers. So have your support team trained, and it really helps if the support team has a technical bent to them, right? So because most of the times you're talking to developers and addressing their concerns, and you need to kind of speak their language.
So, since a lot of product managers would be listening to this, or maybe are listening now, what kind of skills would you look for a product manager to be effective in this role?
I mean, some of the skills is like, I think the skills can be learned. It's not a problem. I think most PMs have the skills. I think where the apprehension lies is the mindset, right? The mindset to not learn something technical.
Hmm.
I think, and this was my initial hesitation when I did start out, right? Like, the thing was, if it was getting too technical or too to a level of coding or anything like that, right? Like, my mind would immediately switch off. But if I understood like the principles, and like if I was able to read through this, it actually, like, helped me to understand that this is not, you don't necessarily have to code to get this done, but you need to understand the technical principles to have an understanding of the impact areas or the drivers for this in the future, right? So
Got it.
I think it's a mindset change to allow yourself to get a little bit technical, and it'll only get better once you scratch the surface, right?
Got it. Yeah.
So I think it's more about a mindset change. The skills, I think most PMs are either learning through reading or from fellow PMs, or they've already done this through experience, right?
Got it. Yeah.
But it's this technical bent that is very important.
Also, when you're setting up a API team, should you have a separate API team? How do you see the mix of product teams? Like, there are product teams who are building features and they want to expose these features to through or data through APIs. Should they manage their APIs themselves? Should you hive off and create a separate API team? How does it look like an ideal setup?
Got it. I think like, so if you have partner APIs and public APIs, you definitely need like a team that kind of manages that whole thing, right? But if you're looking at in features that you're developing internally, and you're kind of, I think there's a flight passing by, just give me a minute.
No worries. Yeah, we can hear you. No problem.
Yeah. So, but if you have features that you're building, right? Like the same team, if a team is already building a feature, the same team can build the APIs. What needs to be understood is like the basic principles that you want to design the API with, right? That needs to be commonly understood across teams. If so, what I mean by principles is like, hey, what is it going to be, a HTTP, HTTPS, or where should we use post, where should we use get, right? What are the different metadata that should be available in the API? What are the date formats we should follow, currency formats we should support, right? If these base rules are set, right, like you don't need to hive off a separate API team to get this done, right? You can start building the features like the APIs first, and if these common guidelines are accepted, each team can build their own. It's just that you need to kind of coordinate well and align on a ground rules.
So you mentioned about thinking about when to start an API program post a SaaS offering. But when you say API first mentality, do you start, say you are building this new feature set or a new value addition? Do you start with designing how the API offering should be, then the SaaS offering, or what does API first
Oh, yeah.
design look like?
So when I'm saying API first, I'm not necessarily thinking of should I expose this feature via an API to the customer.
Oh, okay, not like that. Got it.
Yeah, when I'm saying, like, when I'm having a conversation with my developer counterpart, right, like the conversation I'm having is, hey, can you start with the APIs, start thinking about like well defined APIs, so that if so that one, like the feature that I'm developing is developed in a in a very good way, and it's predictable, right? And it's flexible enough as well, so that the and this and you're able to build on top of it. But once but I'm also thinking is, what I'm thinking is, can you keep these APIs well defined so that if in future I do want to expose them, I should be able to,
Hmm. Got it. Got
right?
it.
Because I don't want to come at a later stage and then use this APIs as like the base and then write a wrapper on top of it and then expose it, right? Like
Got it.
I don't want to do the work again. So, but it definitely helps when you take a API first strategy. Start with, I think it's more of an implementation strategy very early on. But yeah, if you give the perspective, and if you already have a API program, it definitely helps that you could expose it later.
Got it. So that is all already part of your culture if there is already a
Yeah.
API program. Excellent. Cool. What's next? I'm being mindful of the time here.
Yeah.
So we need not rush anyways, because this is going to stay for posterity. So few minutes here and there is well worth it. Yeah.
Definitely. I think, yeah, like I said, like most of us have skills. I think the pitfalls come in terms of mindset, right? And one of the barriers that I mentioned earlier was they're too technical. I leave the details to my developer, let them handle it. They will figure it out. I think the PM mindset needs to change. You need to kind of be empathetic but also open to ideas, because most of your ideas are going to be technical, but yeah, you're the person who knows the user the best, right? Because you're talking to the user, so you need to really bridge that gap of user requirements to about what it needs to look like, right? And that's very important. And the second thing is inside out development, right? Like uh, uh, my developers have already built the APIs for this feature internally. I'll just expose them to the external users. This is not going to work out because no one wants to understand how your software works, right?
Hmm.
Think about the developer who's coming to your API program. They're coming there because they want to solve a problem that they know about. And if you're going to teach them about what your software does and what is the underpinnings of, or what's under the hood, then you're probably going to lose them, right? And they don't want to know about another system altogether, right?
Right.
And you just cannot hope that the developer will put the effort to understand this.
Right.
You need to simplify it, and we'll come to that, what are the principles later. The third thing is leadership alignment. You need, like I mentioned, you need like a sponsor, you need someone to buy into the API program, obviously after all the research you've done, but they need to be also on board with the fact that there there is going to be certain time, resource, and and some mandate requirements to kind of drive a effective execution plan, right?
Mhm.
So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing, I think, where we all kind of uh, uh, fail is like, let's get it right the first time. um, uh, we need to have a iterative mindset for sure, but we need to kind of de-risk the iteration, and we will get into how we can de-risk it in the later slides. But you are going to, more or less, your APIs are going to mature over a period of time. It's just that you need to make sure, if you are going to iterate on the APIs, make sure you're thinking about like how the users will migrate, how big of a change will it be for your users, and give them sufficient time to migrate, right? You can't just turn off the taps one day and say, hey, we are no longer supporting this.
So help me understand, what does migration mean, or does it cover in the next slide?
Yeah, I mean, like if you have version 1 APIs and version 2, right? Like you from an organizational perspective, you don't want to be maintaining version 1 APIs anymore, right? Because either it didn't have a core functionality, or it had a security flaw, or uh, it's no longer the way the developers consume information anymore, right?
Right.
Uh, so hence you came up with a new version, which let's say comes up with a new philosophy altogether of like the security holes are plugged, and the new features are also available, and you've maybe fundamentally changed how different IDs or the webhooks implementation is done, right? Like, just for example, so at this time, when you're going to go and have a conversation with your customer, you're going to say, hey, can you move to version 2, because we have addressed all of these security issues. They're going to come back and say that, hey, you know what, like, my roadmap for this quarter is already fixed. I don't think I can do this in this quarter. I will try to take it up in the next quarter, right? And that's where you need to be accommodative and give this time, and also communicate about, like, that the version 1.0 are deprecating and you need to move to these new APIs, right?
Got
And
it.
if you do that too frequently, then you're not predictable.
So what should you batch yourself with all the improvements per quarter, and
Exactly.
then okay,
Exactly. And have a backward compatibility in the strategy.
like we will only support for the last 3 quarters or something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
But also make sure that your APIs are backward compatible.
What does it mean? So backward, as
So
in
when
you
you're
can only
adding a new feature, you don't necessarily have to. Um, so let's say, instead of if Google Drive came up with a feature saying that you can only save one document at a time, that was the first API. But the second API was, now you can do multiple documents at once, right? So you necessarily need not you can save one document at a time, even in the latest API, right? So it's already backward compatible. So your users who are already saving one document at a time need not upgrade to version 2.
right,
But if they want to do multiple documents, they will upgrade to version 2,
right, got
right?
it.
So it's sort of like supporting like the older versions as well.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Excellent.
Perfect. I think like, now you understand at this point, like, why you want to have an API program, what you want to build. You're
Right.
convinced about, like, the market opportunity, and now you also know the key persona that you're kind of developing it for, right? Which is the
Right.
developer, or a technical PM, or a PM itself, right? And how do you go about, like, designing the API programs that a developer should love, right? Like, and
Right.
be delighted about. And this is a term that's, kind of got a lot of traction in the recent past, which is solving for developer experience, and I think which is very, very important.
Right.
uh, I would call that, if a developer looks at your documentation, um, in how much time is he going to pick up, like say Postman or API Explorer, and going to make the first API call, right?
Mhm.
And is it happening in a matter of minutes,
Right.
right? So that's what you're solving for. And there are like four principles that I've kind of learned from Stripe sessions. I think this is one of the resources that a lot of PMs can leverage, is how they go about like the API design, right? And you have to keep your APIs very, very simple, right? You can't expect the end user to know what is happening inside your software stack. APIs are a very, very powerful abstraction tool. You need to keep it simple. And if you're catering to a wider audience, you make sure that you don't use industry specific terms, right?
Mhm.
uh, uh, what I mean by this is, if let's say, if you can abstract out the package, or if you can abstract out like the, let's say, in case of Stripe, right? Like you have, in some countries it's called IFSC, in some countries it's called a Swift code, in some countries it might be called account number, it might be like, a card number, or a permanent account number, right? Like these
Right.
are all uh, different things that are used with various terminologies in different countries, right? So how do you kind of provide one simple term that helps the developer understand that, oh, this is the key value pair that kind of supports all of this information, right? So
Got
you
it.
have to abstract that out to the developers, and you can't sit there and teach them what is a permanent account number, or you can't teach them what's a Swift code, right? Like you need to make sure that this is abstracted out to the developers and is easily available to them. So you need to be very simple. Please avoid jargon, marketing or otherwise, right? Uh, Give it to the developers straight, like give it, um, it has to be very, very, very functional,
Got
right?
it.
And that's what developers love. They don't want to be lost, they want to be like, guide me how to get it done, right?
Got it.
So it has to be simple, flexible, right? Like you're talking to developers who have different skill, who have different exposure, who worked in different fields,
Right.
right? And who are also working with different stacks, right? And their technology stacks might have inherent restrictions, right? Your APIs need to be able to cater to those restrictions and constraints which are realistic in nature, right? You can't obviously design for bad tech stacks, but you can support, like, the range of um, uh, uh, based on like, the current developer uh, skills that are there, and like, experience levels, as well as like what are the realistic tech stacks limitations that you need to support to, right?
Mhm.
So when, like, one of the examples that I can think of is when we introduced webhooks, right? A lot of times, like, and people were used to this polling mechanism, right? If they wanted to know the status about something, they used to hit that server with a message saying, tell me the status about it, right?
Right.
And it was a very, very you used to constantly keep polling that service, right?
Mhm.
And when we kind of got these webhooks, which where we said, hey, you don't have to call us every time you want to get a updated status. Whenever there is an update, we will send you that information.
Right.
When we made this change, right, we suddenly realized that customers who were polling suddenly couldn't switch to that, and they had like inherent technical constraints to come up with a callback server, right,
Right.
to kind of listen to this webhooks.
Right.
So then what we did is we still like made sure that our polling API is at least supported for a while and it's present,
Right.
right? So there are inherent constraints, limitations available for users,
Got it.
and you need to factor that in. The third one is composability. You always need to understand, like, if you're providing an API, and if you're a point or a transaction based API, you
Right.
need to fit into their operating business model. You can't change their business model. Stripe doesn't go and say that, if you have to do the payment, this API only can be called at this point.
Right.
No, it is basically present everywhere and anywhere the triggers of payments can happen, but also it fits into their current uh, uh, business, how they do business, right? Like, which is help discovery, propose the product, and then do the purchase within the application itself,
Got
right?
it.
So that's
Yeah.
how Stripe kind of fits. So you can't suddenly change the operating business model altogether.
Got it.
Yeah, and always prepare for the next decade. You're not building this for like the next 3 months and throwing it away.
What
Once
does
you're
it mean?
yeah, because once the users have uh, okay, like, uh, think about a developer, right? Like, think about a developer who's there in a company. He's probably like dealing with 4 or 5 different APIs that are plugged into his application, and he doesn't want to be woken up in the middle of the night saying that one API is broken down, right? Or it's been deprecated, or it's not working, right? Like, and that's the constant fear most of the developers and the DevOps team kind of are under, right? And this is tremendous pressure for them, so they'll always choose systems that are predictable, and that are reliable, and they also have good uptime, right?
Right.
But if you are constantly changing the API endpoints and the signature, right, and you're doing this year after year, or even like, quarter after quarter, and it's
Right.
not, and your API releases are not incremental, or they don't factor in the customers who are there on previous APIs, and you're constantly asking them, hey, can you upgrade to the new API? More often than not, this is an implementation overhead at their end, and that
Right.
the developer is going to say, hey, this, they have not designed this properly, or this doesn't work, and I can't sit and keep managing this API. A
Got it.
developer would love to have this API integrated and forget about it for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So are there best practices involved? Like, say for example, if I'm a Stripe user, I don't have to bother about their APIs.
Stripe has like redefined the space. Like, they have version management at their side, so they know what version you're pegged to, and they manage it internally. So I think that's a
Okay.
different philosophy altogether, and they always keep this in mind. I think this there are no. I would say best practices again, like it comes down to like having a good beta period, hitting a different set of customers, knowing the range of users that are going to use the API, right? If you have this, you're going to get like 70 to 80% of it, right? So that's
Mm,
why doing a good beta is very important. Do multiple iterations when you're in beta,
got it.
right? But once you do go public, don't like keep changing it, right? And
Mm,
if you do have like a breaking change, make sure that you're having a conversation with your architects and everyone, like developers, to kind of understand why the breaking change is introduced and how you could stop those future breaking changes from happening, right?
right.
And the third thing is like provide a bridge solution. Your transition is not binary. No one's going to suddenly stop using 1.0 and then turn on the taps in 2.1. They're going to do that as a gradual process. They're going to roll it out to their wider set of systems. So you need to
Right.
make sure that it's a gradual process rather than like a overnight uh, uh, turning off taps, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And yeah, and give them guides, give them like support, and handhold them through the migration process.
Got it.
Yeah, I think the other question is, those are all the principles. That's fine, but then how do I? What are the different questions that are there in a developer's mind when they kind of choose a API partner, right? And what is the user journey, right?
So
So
this is during the evaluation phase.
this is the evaluation phase, right?
Got
And that's when we are trying to convince the developer we are the best solution out there, and the developer is trying to determine, can this help me sleep peacefully at night
it. Right.
after I implement it, right?
Mhm.
So, and is it going to help me also cater to my use case, which is the main problem, right? Like, how do I
Right.
solve the problem with this API? They're thinking about, like, a peace of mind, as well as, like, the offering, the solution offering, and those are the two key questions, right? And at all of this point, like, they're judging your product on the capabilities, as well as how you've designed the system, right? So if you're looking at if you were making a traditional SaaS purchase, they were, users were just looking at, like, the interface, and they are understanding the usability of it, and if they like it, they're going to buy it, right? And if the core use case is solved, yes. But here the developers are also making, because they know they have a technical bent, they're also thinking about how you structure the APIs. They get to know whether you have maturity in your APIs, right? They also will try to, form an estimate about, like, how well you have designed the system, because they get curious, right?
Mhm.
These are the other things that you have to be uh, um, you know um, uh, aware about, right? They're trying to form a perception of your product, and they're also and they're also going to be very, very curious, right?
Got it.
So you need to be very, very comprehensive in your approach towards, like, enabling developers and solving these questions that come to a developer's mind, right?
Got it. So
So
you have a list of questions here. Okay.
yeah, these are the list of questions, right? Like, what is the API? So when I'm discovering a particular solution, obviously I'm asking about, what does the API do, what is it all about, right?
All
Or
right.
if I already know, is the API documentation, like, telling me what exactly this is doing, right?
Got
Does
it.
it, right? The other thing, like, that the like, you know they're also going to be like, how can I quickly check whether it's going to work or not,
Right.
right? How can I start integrating, like, where can I find different resources, different support
Right.
that is available to me, right? This is what is happening in, like, first 5 to 10 minutes of them landing on your website.
Right. Got it.
The second thing that they're going to do along with the PMs is, like, who's the person who's, like, making this API public? Can I trust this API? Is the company that is giving this API reliable? Is it going to be in existence for some period of time, right? And is it something I can take internally and share it with my fellow developers, right? Are there any special requirements for me to get started on this API, right? Do I need 4 keys or 5 keys, or there is like a account setup process, right? So they're evaluating all of this, right? And at the time, like, when they want to try, this is probably your 1 hour to about, like, 3 hours they've landed on your website, right? Like, and this 1 hour to 3 hours can happen over a period of multiple days. But what I'm trying to say is, this is more or less like the time they spend on your website, right?
Mhm.
At this point, like, they've evaluated, and it uh, checks, like, the preliminary check boxes. What
Right.
they're going to determine is, like, how easy is it to sign up, how easy is it to get my keys, get my access to the system, how
Right.
good is the documentation, in terms of, does it, like, let me uh, uh, does it explain all the parameters, the different the endpoints, the parameters, the date formats, the payloads, right, and all of the authorization types, right, and all of the and the scopes. So is the documentation giving me all of this information in a standard and a structured way,
Right.
right? And if the documentation is good, then probably the at least the sandbox integration is done in like maybe a few minutes, right?
Right.
And they're able to test it quickly. And they, when they are testing it, they also want information around like what are the error logs, are the error logs coming out properly, are they giving me proper error codes so that I can, you know, plug the errors into my error monitoring system, right?
Right.
Because maybe the company is using pagerduty to like make people aware of any outages, etc.,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that's one thing which is very important. So your error codes have to be predictable, very well defined. They can't be like, oh, something internal failed, right?
Right.
Like, you know, they have to have these proper codes so that they can be segmented, and they can be used by the developers to kind of monitor use easily, right? Developers or DevOps teams,
Got
right?
it.
um, then the community itself, right? Like if I face any issue, do I need to talk to a support person, or is there a Stack Overflow, or there is like a chatbot or anything, or there is like, you know, a community where I can reach out to, or anyone else has figured this how to work around this problem? It'll help a lot, because
What is the
if
good what is the ideal way if you are a company with a API program? Should you build a community, or should you have a support team, or should you have a FAQs? What's the
you
best
should
way?
have FAQs and try to build out a Stack Overflow, because a developer is ready to trust another developer rather than your support team.
Ah, I see. Got it.
Uh, and support teams might have barriers to get through to the developer in terms of tooling and all of that in the initial days, but building a support team will take some time.
Got it.
But if you want to offer a community to the developers very early on,
Yeah.
there are options available for you: FAQs, Stack Overflow communities, and you can build out your own page, right? And you can start from there,
Got it.
right? And it's a good idea if it is self-service, right? uh, the thing is, there is while they do want to talk to support team, if they don't want to talk to a support team unless and until they want to.
Right.
Most of the conversation either happen through a chat, and one thing we've kind of done is, like, for all our prospects and customers, we add them to a Slack group, right?
Right.
And they have easy access, and you have no idea how easy it is to establish trust and work with the developers over a Slack channel, right? Like,
Right.
they'll ping. It need not be synchronous. They're not looking for time. They're looking for, like, you know, a response, like, in a decent time frame,
Got
right?
it.
So that's one of the ways. And yeah, and having channels of communication is very important, and making it self-service is really important, because they really don't want to talk to a support team, right? Like, how is it that I can give adequate tools, good documentation, and all of this via a dashboard where the error logs, response logs, and different things can be tracked by the developer themselves, right?
Got it.
That's very important. If you do that, you're also going to reduce your support cost by a lot,
Got it.
right? And we've already touched upon the support system, so I'll not go there. But yeah, during the runtime, you need to understand, like, the maintenance is actually a nightmare. For you, it might be that you're the only API. I mean, you might, as a PM, you'll be like, hey, I'm just one API, right? Like, so maintenance shouldn't be a problem. But the
Right.
problem is your customer is probably talking to 10, 15, 20 different APIs, and
Right.
they're managing that at their end. You need to put yourself in their shoes, and if you're not giving them a easy way to monitor, like, keep updating them about upgrades or downtimes and all of this, you're going to be a roadblock for them, right, and their progress, and you might ultimately affect their users, their end users, and that's a big problem.
So what's the best way to communicate them fast and seamlessly?
Yeah. So I mean, you have a product status page like which shows the uptime. Make sure your APIs are designed to be highly available, right? Because if your APIs turns down, and if you are a critical part of like your customer's workflow,
Right.
if you're out, then most probably the customer's business is also out.
Got it. So it's highly critical. Yeah.
It's highly critical. So make sure that you design for high availability and high uptime. And the third thing is, if you have a scheduled maintenance window, you communicate it well in advance,
Got it.
like weeks, not days.
Got it. Cool.
Right.
Developer portal,
Yes.
the only single window for every organization.
So I think this is like, the interface that finally there is some interface, right? Like till now we've been talking about something which doesn't have a face, right?
Right.
Because APIs are, you don't follow this concept of what you see is what you get, right? Like, so they're
Specific.
abstracted out
Yeah.
behind the interface, right? So I think a developer portal is a good way to kind of provide a face to your APIs, and like, a single entry point for all your customers as well as prospects. You might include your marketing page as well in this, but ideally I would want to keep it separate, right? Like, because marketing page is to sell your APIs and get the users onto a plan, whereas
So
the
help me
API.
understand. So this is important. Huh? Usually, marketing has a say on it, on how we want to promote this. What is your opinion with your experience? So you said split it, or should you have within the same
Keep it
page?
separate. Keep it separate, because
Mhm.
the API developer portal is more as is needs to be seen from a point of
Developer.
a developer resource,
So
right?
it should be as focused, as clutterless, as
Exactly.
less market speak and more direct functional speak, isn't it?
Exactly.
Mm.
I even want my marketing pages to avoid jargon as much as possible,
I
but
see.
yeah, I mean, both of I mean, that also depends on the field you are, but it really helps, especially if you're a API program, to be very uh, open, transparent, and like clean speak, right?
Which is
No.
your favorite developer portal?
So one is definitely Stripe, then Twilio, and even Postman has a very good developer portal. So I think these three, and yes, we at SIgnEasy are getting there. So it'll probably be the fourth one.
Ah, nice. I'm gonna share something. So I'll just pull yours out. I'm sharing Stripe documentation. All which one? Yes, yeah. Do you see it?
Just 1 minute. Let me stop sharing.
So you don't have to stop sharing.
Okay.
I can just flip between two windows.
Okay.
Um, do
Yeah.
do you see on the monitor the Stripe docs?
I don't see it, but
Ah, you
yeah.
don't see it. Ah, okay, you don't see it. So maybe you can open it in a browser. So I'm having a
Exactly.
look at it, and I just need your opinion because it looks neat to me, and
Yeah.
I think there is no marketing speak here. It says
Exactly.
stripe.com/docs, and then it says documentation. Explore our guides and examples to integrate
Exactly.
Stripe, and then it says
Exactly.
payments. Then there are screenshots of the code and on the UI end, just to compare between them. And it has become different sections: business operations, finance and services, and then it says explore Stripe products. So I think it so what would you say about the structure of this, and what is working for Stripe here? I'm just trying to understand. I'm a novice here, I don't know. So what is good
Exactly.
about this documentation?
So I think one thing is like the obviously Stripes mature to this level. It is there are a lot of tools, guides, and tutorials that are available, and it's taken time for them to get over here. But if you were to highlight, one thing is the quick search of documentation that is available, right? If I am a returning person and I'm looking at like how to get started or how to get my API keys, all of those articles are like it yeah, I can do a simple quick search, right? So the information is very accessible. The second thing that you will notice is like the documentation itself, sorry, the website itself lands on the documentation, and they have given you ways to kind of like show both the what is the API structure and what it will do from you from a visual perspective, right? So
Hmm.
they've given examples of that, and they have given you, if you further go and click into get started, what you will have is a way to kind of try it out and mock the APIs, right? So if you could change something on the left hand side, your on the right hand side, the visual experience kind of changes immediately. So if
Okay.
this is there to me as a developer, so I know what is the range of this API immediately, right? What are the patterns that are allowed? What can I change? What is the flexibility that is available, right? So
Right.
this try it out and mocks, especially because APIs are not visual in nature, but the very fact that you've provided such a visual and this works if you have a visual component to your APIs, right? But if you've given this, then you've formed a picture in my head, right? And you've made the process of like this evaluation decision so much more easy for me, right?
Right.
And what you will see is they have APIs, SDKs, and code samples and helper libraries that are available,
Right.
that are basically helping me as a developer if I'm belonging to a specific stack, right? And I want to get started immediately. It's giving me boilerplate code, right? Something
Got it.
like of a quick template that I can leverage from here. So it's very important to provide these helper libraries and code samples, because they don't have to figure out everything out from scratch, right? These are nice little wrappers that will help you get quickly started. It'll also tell you, like, you know it's like when you were learning to kind of program, if you had like examples of hello world, you would use that same code, and but you would build on top of it, right? Like,
Mhm.
so
That's correct.
this
That's correct.
is this is this is like giving you the like a stencil and saying trace this,
Got
right?
it.
So that's very important of like these code samples. So I think that helps a lot. And obviously the documentation has to be good, it has to be comprehensive, and it has to be well structured. But
Correct.
their documentation takes you through the journey of how to get started, where do I find my keys, how do I put this, let's say, in my browser on the client side, or if I what do I do if I have like server side requirements. All of these things are very well broken, and the support is available right out there. It's always accessible, so you
Mm.
can either ask for support, or you can like go online, go to Stack Overflow, search for it, right? And they have all of this already available.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. There is a good support page as well. Excellent. But they don't have a marketing page. No, the marketing page is the home page. Is that how it
Yeah,
is?
which is the
Got
home
it.
page. Yeah, that's
Got it.
that's about it.
Excellent. I'm adding your screen back.
So I think this is the reason why you need to kind of build for developers like from the get go, right? Give them as many guides, trainings, and tutorials as possible. Code samples, code snippets, sample apps if necessary, so that they're able to kind of play around with the application that is built on top of these APIs, right? And like give a way to kind of let them quickly try out and mock the APIs. That's really very important.
Right. Excellent.
I think we like we as product managers are already aware of, like, good uh, specking processes, design specking, and testing processes and release processes, right? It's just that it's more or less similar. It's just that there's more nuance to a API program, and even in your designs, you're a little bit more technical, right? uh, you in a normal feature, you're more about, like, visual designs and all of user journeys and personas and all of that. Your persona is more or less constant, but your design document starts becoming a little bit more technical. You start understanding what the specification needs to be, what are the events, sorry, what are the endpoints. Events are more or less, the different callback events, or the information that needs to be passed back to the customer, right? All of those things like start becoming part of your design document very early on, right?
Right.
And it's better to do multiple API reviews, because you want to make sure that this feature addresses developer experience. What are the core operations it will be doing? And if you have a front end component, like, what is the necessary tooling that you need to kind of prep in? What are the analytics that you might want to map in? What are the trigger actions that you want to provide the data to, right? And all of this, making sure whether you're adhering to security practices. If you are an API program, more or less you're going to be consumed by an enterprise spread across various industries. So along with the traditional security practices, are you making sure that each endpoint is, let's say, a HIPAA compliant one, GDPR compliant, or is SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 2 type 1, type 2 compliant, right? So you're going for all of these compliances and ensuring that you're making sure that that plays a role inside the review process. uh, and the third thing is, you're always in beta. You have to dog food your APIs. You have to consume your own APIs, and you have to make sure that you're able. And if you have a API first approach, that means this is already there within your company, right? And you don't have to worry about it that much when you have a API first. But if you're not, you make sure that you are using this to either build out your own partnership or your own sample applications. Try that entire thing out, like have user interviews, right? And drive some experimental usage, right? And roll it out to then a smaller set of customers after the dog fooding is done with a beta release. Or if it is possible, if it is in the same endpoint, like, just gate it out. Like, what I mean by that is, just uh, do a release of just one component of the entire API endpoint, rather than flush out the whole thing, right? And then once you're sure, keep an eye out on the errors and all of it, and make sure that your analytics and everything is wired in. Your support team is now geared up with all the possible issues that they can come with. Your FAQs are updated after this early version release, and then you do a gradual rollout,
Right. Brilliant.
right?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So this will help you to de-risk your kind of development and make sure that you're kind of going the right way about it.
Excellent.
I think we are nearing the end. I think we've kept our users like engaged very long, but I think this is one of the important things. Like, after having done all of this hard work, you need to know that how do you define success, right? Like, what does success look like? It's very, very important. We have a very close parallel in terms of funnels with SaaS applications. Uh, right, it begins at a sign up. In SaaS products, it will be about like the first click or the first document, or some transaction that they do in the UI. The same thing here would, for in the realm of developers, would be when was the first call made, right? And how many of them made it, right? And when were the first 100 API calls made? Like, is it uh, because from the first call to about the 100th call, probably they are still in like some sort of beta or sandboxing, or they're still implementing it at their end, right? And after the first 100 API calls, it's more about like if they start using it, uh, are 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 they using it on, at what level are they using it? Are they exceeding the free limits? Are they your customer that you should focus on? Are they growing customers, etc., right? And once or are they finding value, right? Once they have converted, after they're moving to the free limits, it's more about making sure that they convert easily, and your plans are allowing that to the user, right?
So
um,
a freemium model is better to test out
yeah,
and validate. Okay.
yeah, I think a freemium model is definitely necessary, unless and until your there are costs related to this, right? um, like one example I could find where freemium doesn't work is, um, if if you are integrating, like, let's say the uh, credit scores of different users, right? Like, because you need to kind of pay to government agencies and all of that a lot of money for each call that you make, right? Of
Mm.
you're subsuming a cost, like from the very first production call, right?
Right.
So over there, like a freemium model might not work,
Right.
right? So there you
Because
might
you
want,
would eventually want them to test it out, isn't it? So
yes,
without
you're going
testing,
to give a
without,
sandbox.
yeah,
The sandbox has nothing to do with the free limits. The free limits is to make sure the barrier to entry is very less, like the barrier to start using your product.
what's the difference between sandbox and barrier to entry?
So the sandbox, you might give them an environment that is sort of like a demo environment, right? Like, to
Ah,
help
okay.
them when they are integrating it, and figure out what are the capabilities and
I
everything.
see.
Not
Testing out.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. But like, let's say once you are in the production system, you don't know how big it will become. You don't know how many calls you're making, right? At that time, if you're going to put a purchase decision saying, hey, you need to make a minimum of 1,000 calls, and hence the plan for that is this, right?
Right.
Then you are enforcing a purchase decision at a point which is not necessary, right? So
Right.
if you have like a freemium model, it makes sense for you to kind of give this, because uh, a lot of users will start small, and then once they grow, they're going to be there for a long time with you,
Right.
right? And more often than not, like, your top 80% of your revenue is going to come from the top 20%, and they're going to, like, the top 20% will just like make massive amount of calls. So this will not even figure, the free limits. While it's an important decision to monetize, like, it's an important lever to monetize, you need to be okay with the fact that it's a freemium model, and you need to give some free limits, because that's what it helps you cast a wide net and reduce the barrier to entry,
Hmm. Got it.
right? And like the final thing is, like any other SaaS product, would your customers want to refer your product, right? Like, have they evangelized your API? If you see, like, in this whole podcast, we've talked about Stripe so much, like we've literally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you need to kind of create that experience for developers to say, hey, because developers will be part of a community, or they're talking to their fellow friends, like, do they recommend your product, right?
Right.
So that's the funnel we are looking at. And yeah, obviously, like, the key metric I here at SIgnEasy look at is the time to first hello world, right? The
Hmm.
first ping that happens to my API,
Right.
right? And that's very important. I want it to be in a matter of minutes rather than, like, let's say, days or weeks,
Hmm.
right? Because this encompasses everything. Like, it's one north star metrics, which, like, to move this, You need to make sure that your development documentation is perfect. You've made enough support tools are available, right? It kind of subsumes everything, this metric. Your you know and if enough self-serve options are available, right? And that's why this metric is very important for me. There are supporting metrics, but that's one metric that I keep a eye on, because it's one thing that's like a qualitative as well as a quantitative metric for me, right?
Right.
So I keep what are the other metrics I'm keeping an eye on is support tickets per customer per month. If it is insanely difficult for people to kind of get started by themselves, then your support tickets are going to be high. You're not going to be very scalable, right?
Right.
If you have to like reach a level where a developer just sees your documentation and is able to go live, that's the best way, right?
Got it.
Number of customers, again, quite important. Number of developers, the annual contract value, the LTV to CAC ratios. These are some things which I'm looking at. I'm also one of the things that you might ask me is, what is the churn? Why is churn not visible over here, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
So the thing is, like, in my initial days I used to keep an eye on churn, very very important. But the thing is, one big reward of API customers is, once customers like your product and they've gone live, churn is least of your worries. It'll be in single digit percentages, and more often than not, lower
Because there is
single.
because the what there's a stickiness to it already, so it becomes difficult for
Yes,
them.
they
Okay.
are highly sticky.
Okay.
They're highly sticky customers, because when people adopt your product, a lot of evaluation and has been done ahead of time. So if they have made the first call and they have looked into the production tokens or keys,
Right.
they've made that decision, and they're going to stick there with you for a while. Once they're
This is
there, they
also a big aha. This is also a big lesson for me now. So that means, hey, do all your efforts, make it easy, make it seamless, create a free plan, something of that sort, get a great developer portal, do a good onboarding, take care of them. And once they are in, once they're happy, they have evaluated, once they are in for a long haul, unless, of course, you
yes,
screw up badly.
yeah,
So,
you have very little room for screwing up.
okay,
I mean, the first instance you might be forgiven, the second, maybe third, but the fourth, definitely not.
got it. Excellent. This is also great.
Yeah. So annual contract value, the LTV to CAC ratios. So you might realize when you have your SaaS account and, like, your enterprise API plans, uh, API plans have a tendency to be at least like 5 to 10x bigger than your topmost SaaS plan or SaaS customers.
API plans are
Sorry, so the revenue from your API customers will almost be like 5 to 10x of your top paying SaaS customer.
revenue or profit?
I mean,
Because
you can
because
get.
because the cost of acquisition of a SaaS customer would be higher than API. Would that is that what you're saying? Or
Yes, yes.
got
So
it.
and like, even the revenue is going to be much much higher,
Higher. Okay.
right?
Got it.
So
Got it.
that's one
Because your
contract.
acquisition cost, it is seamless. There is so you don't have to your salespeople don't have to go there. The developers will evaluate. So the cost of acquisition is much less
Exactly,
in an API program than a SaaS program, because SaaS you have to do a demo, you have to create a demo
exactly.
account, and then
And
onboarding
with
stuff
each
like that.
team that you're acquiring within for your SaaS tool within the same company, you might have to do the demo again. You might have to give additional discounts, or you might have to alter the pricing strategy. But here in the API case, unless it's really, really high volumes, you won't revisit your contract very often.
Got it. Excellent. This is another aha for me. So many important concepts intertwined. Huh?
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What have we got? Is this the last slide?
I think we are done. Thanks for sticking
No, no.
for so much
So
time.
you don't. Okay, Vijay. Let me give you a stat. The longer the format of my podcast, the more popular it is. So it is not about stretching the limits. The longer the format, the more popular it is. Why? Because then the audience believes that, oh, there is massive value here. We are not only scratching the surface. And that's why I have done 3 hours. So the head of shadi.com, naukri.com, bharatmatrimony.com. So we did a 3 hour episode. Of course, when we published it into two parts. But that became one of the most popular episodes. The longer it is, because we are catering to real product managers, so they want meatier stuff. So, but hey, you know what? I can't thank you enough, Vijay. This was massive value. And I have a feeling that the audience, the listeners, viewers are going to love this, especially since you have so many slides. I think the I have a my audio is more popular, but I think people are gonna come to video just to look at the slides. I'm also I hope you are okay to give them
Yeah,
access
please
to
do
the
share it.
presentation so that they can download the slides as well. And
Definitely.
Vijay, if others want to reach out to you or SIgnEasy, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I think the best way is LinkedIn. I'm quite responsive on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can reach out to me, and we also, I think, if it is regarding SIgnEasy, you can reach out to any one of us via our LinkedIn uh, profile, and like we are very responsive to uh, people asking us questions and like engaging with our audience.
All right, great. So we had planned to do a 1.5 hour session. This is 2 hour and 40. We just clocked 2 hour 40. So, but it was all worth it. Thanks again, Vijay. Can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Ravi. I hope like this was really valuable for your listeners.
This was massively valuable. Hey, we
Thank
have
you.
an audience question. Do you want to take it at the? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do
I
not know.
can't see the question.
No, I
Just
will. I posted it on the screen. It comes from Jonathan Elder. First of all, he says, "Let me." He compliments, thanks, insights, Vijay and Ravi, and then he says, "What API platform would be best for Salesforce, Microsoft CRM, and LinkedIn, Twitter, social activity? We currently integrate Salesforce, LinkedIn, but as things get more complex."
okay. So I John, maybe Jonathan is asking about like there's like little context lacking in that. So
Hmm.
I think one of the things is API gateways are definitely okay. So one thing is from an integration perspective, right? Like, so if he's talking about how do I integrate LinkedIn, let's say Salesforce and other tools, like you have a lot of good no code platforms like Zapier and IFTTT. But if I wanted more functionality and white labeling, white labeling required in my tool, I would look at Workato, right? And this will help me like integrate with multiple products. But if the question was more towards like what API gateway, I'm like I said, you can start looking really at open source tools like Kong. Amazon has a good starter plan, and but you would have to build a lot of the functionalities on your own. And obviously, if you're a big scale API provider, I
So
think
he
you would.
says we currently we do not use a platform since it's a one-to-one.
I think the best option then would be to go with something like Kong or AWS API.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan, for your question. And I was happy to have some engagement in terms of audience question as well. With that, again, thanks so much, Vijay. See you
Thank
around.
you.
You have the good rest of the weekend.
Thank you, Ravi. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.